Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today we're talking about how order upgrades your life faster. Why wouldn't you? Let's just do it. Let's just get the life upgraded. Why do we gotta wait around for stuff? And what kind of upgrade are we talking about? I think the one that we want, the one that I want, the one that it would lead to all the other upgrades that you may be hoping for is the upgrade in the weather forecast. I'm talking about the head weather forecast. How much of our life and how much of the messed up stuff that happens in our relationships and in our aspirations and in our day-to-day and our interactions with strangers and everything, how much is that from the barrage of confusing thoughts or, let's say, grade C- thoughts? They're not terrible, but this is not the right impulse. It's not really bringing me happiness, all the way down to the full-on attacks on our worthiness as a human being, or the fears that won't let us relax and actually participate in life. All the stuff that's coming in here. Let's say, we've got this C-, D-, B+, or you want to get better, whatever it is, level of internal service. Internal consciousness service. How do we get that up? How do we upgrade that into something that is just like, you just look at like a phone in a movie that's 10 years old. I was watching this documentary about the universe that was probably 10 years old, and just looking at the phones that they have in it, and they're talking about, look how amazing these phones are. They're not amazing. There's something way better out there coming down the pike. Can we get that for the mind? How do you do that, and how do you do it quick? This is from Swedenborg's Journal of Spiritual Experiences, which I'm working my way through now, and every so often I just got to mark a number and say, dude, this is News from Heaven, because this rocks. This is a diamond in the rough. It's not really rough, because it's like a diamond in the rest of the diamonds. This is 1936. Some are quite easily led by the Lord. This is good. You might think, I don't really see that as that sparkly, shiny of a thing, but to be led by the Lord, you may think, why would I want to give up my independence for that? But we're always led by something. Either you're led by, let's say, everything we talked about in the beginning. Led by fear, led by some kind of negative ambition, led by what? We're always led by something. But the difference between this stuff, between all these clouds that I was mentioning before, right? And this little guy over here, the Lord, is that, what is the Lord? The Lord is divine wisdom. And you can just tune that out as a term. Oh, divine and wisdom. What does that mean? But we're talking about the smartest thing that can exist. The pure intelligence, absolute knowledge of everything. If you think about you're going into something, or an arena where you want to accomplish a task, how much is your ability to effectively accomplish that tied to the amount you know about it? There is no better information source. And don't just think about it as, Lord would know how many marbles are in a jar, but a deep understanding of how systems work, how people are, what leads to what, and a knowledge of us individually. We're talking about our life. We want our lifestyle, our life upgraded. We don't even really know what we are compared to God. Most of my memories are inaccessible to me now. What my motivations really are, what my potential is, I don't know. But divine wisdom has got that just like on a sticky note, on its dashboard, on its desktop. There's a lot of really high-end knowledge. Of course you would want, we're all obsessed with, like, get a smartphone, get a smart house, get a smart car. Let's get a smart operating system for where we're going. And then, don't forget, the Lord is also divine love. Right? This, you may think, I don't want to be led by the Lord. You may not think this, but you could think this. I don't want to be led by the Lord. I want to be, the Lord is this like some kind of deity, right? Maybe it's bright and shiny, but it's way over here, and it's just perhaps more concerned about the big picture than me, and I am very plugged into my needs because I am myself. But the Lord actually is more interested in our happiness and more interested in us than we are, even in ourselves. Divine love is the ultimate advocate. So to have the ultimate knowledge and the ultimate advocate together, and to have those things be giving you tips. Why do people go out and hire life coaches? Why do people go out and see therapists and do whatever they do to try to say, can you bring your expertise to how I should lead my life? This is really good. We really want this. So if some people are quite easily led by the Lord, how long will he spend on this title? Just about 25 more minutes. Kidding. Then if somebody's quite easily led by the Lord, I want to figure out how we get there. Although everyone is able to be led wherever it pleases the Lord, nevertheless, some are led more easily than others. Even for omnipotence, we've got a distinction here. So how do you get in that category? So if God can do whatever he wants and lead us, because I said this is about our happiness, let's say this is the field of possibilities here. And there is something amazing, happiness, let's call it eternal happiness. Just that sounds fairly amazing. Right there. And we're here. Some are very easily led by the Lord. Let's say it's a straight line. We'll do this with this highlighter. Right in there. And that's the optimal path of least resistance, and we can get right to where we want to be in there. But we can be in this other category where we are having to be navigated around all kinds of things. We have to take a winding route. So which one do you want to be in? You know, how do we get it so we're taking the straight and narrow, although it's very broad in that picture. But also, how could that be? If you're all powerful, what's the difference between one or the other? Is it a difference in how much we're on the God's priority list? How could you have a distinction like this? From what does it arise? The reason is that the Lord leaves to everyone their freedom of thinking in accordance with the inclination of each, and the Lord does not infringe on this freedom. So we are free to be us. And God is not forcing us. Isn't it widely debated whether there is such a thing as God or not? So obviously, even if you're taking the position that God exists, God is seems very hands-off, because you don't even have to say, yes, God exists. You can go your whole life firmly believing there's no such thing. So there's definitely this freedom of thinking. And this is not even really just about does God exist or not exist, but we are the kind of people we are. We're interested in what we're interested in. So that actually affects, because God has got to let us be us, whatever that choice is, that is what's the complicating factor here. Therefore, and so what do you do? How do you get into that middle thing? And this, when I came across this, I was just like, man, This is cool. I don't know if it's going to strike you as anything. To me, it's happening. Therefore, they who have faith, who believe that the Lord, what does it mean? Faith is the affection for truth. So who love what's true. So what does that mean? Who believe that the Lord governs all things. As I just said, man, we don't even know for sure that there is a God, because it's so hard to sometimes hear God or believe that there's God. But to go beyond that and think that God is actually managing the big picture and the small picture of everything, and who do not allow themselves, here's the other side of it, who do not allow themselves to be driven by passion and falsity, are more easily led. There we get it. There's our keyword here. So how do you get to be more easily led? You have faith, and particularly this tenet that, look, it is, if we're in this box here, that God actually is the force operating in here, if we want to get there. By our own thinking, it seems to be that if it's our own thinking, too bad I chose such a clearful color for us rejecting the divine. Well, I mean, cheerful. We can go in a lot of places kind of by our own freedom, and God is actually always bending us back up and happier than we would be trying to go. But if you want to get here, you just can't do that without this belief, which is this paradox that Swedenborg often wants to drive home in these sorts of things. But I love this part. Driven by passion and falsity. So passion is not necessarily like, I love to paint. It's, that word, whatever the original word is, what I understand it as is this is more like, everything that's limited and negative and nasty and selfish and carnal, all the things that are opposed to love and truth and what's bigger, we know what they are. So the more that stuff overwhelms us, and the more that we're adamant about things that aren't true, that's difficult. That the Lord is then having to pull us along and fight those things in every step as God is trying to get us to where we want to go. This too was said in the presence of angels. And he adds this sometimes. And I don't know. So this is his journal. This is not published. So you don't know is this an indicator to him that he feels like, yes, this is accurate because angels, I said it near them and they didn't say anything? Or is he just noting like, hey, I was hanging out with angels when I did this? Either way, that's when it happened. Now look, we have this whole principle here, which we're actually going to return to. And this is the meat of the story here. But we get a whole different slice of spiritual life right here. So just clear out your mind for a second, and let's eat a second. Let's cleanse the palate, eat a second course here. This proposition was debated among spirits. So when Swedenborg is in the presence of angels, but there's also spirits around, it seems like there's always a crew around, some of whose reasonings and replies I heard and understood. Many I did not hear, which in my judgment were so refined that people on earth would be amazed that such perfect arguments could be exchanged. So maybe in your head, as we are reading this first part here, you are saying, I like this, I don't like that. Here's what I think is wrong with that. Here's an argument for or against that principle. That's what spirits were doing. And to Swedenborg, who had been around a lot of really high-end debate, he was saying that the arguments that were coming out from those spirits were really good. I think people in the world would be shocked at how good they were at arguing. Some of them, which he can't even really hear because they're a little above his, he can't quite tune into that frequency, which can kind of happen the higher up you go spiritually. If you're not equipped for it, the less and less you perceive. So these are good arguments. So you would think, wow, this is really going to lead to them really understanding this concept in an amazing way. But I noticed that some, after the disagreement, were so much in the dark that they did not know, what's a good code for that? They did not know what was true. Something that is likely to happen with truths that are argued about for a long time, which are darkened, so that the debaters are afterwards blind to the very truth. I was in the company of some of these. So there you have people arguing really well and really cleverly about this, but it seems like the net effect is not that we've refined it, and that now we really get it and we've picked off the weak points. It's that we've blown it out so that now we don't even know if it's true. And this is a refrain that happens in Swedenborg. And he talks a lot about arguing for the sake of arguing. And I know that in his day there was this sort of style of debate that was vaunted, and I think we have it in spots here now, but it was argue one side of this issue, argue the other side. If you can argue both convincingly, you're a master thinker. Whereas Swedenborg is very clearly, after he's having these spiritual experiences, falling into like, if it's true, it's true. It's not some great thing to be able to manipulate people by clever arguments, like what's true and what's not true. So these spirits here were going after this, and in the end made it less and less clear to them. Coming to the point. So that's just an aside. Now we're back to our order increasing your life upgradability. Coming to the point. It will be just as easy for the Lord by omnipotence and miracles to lead one person as to lead another. Yeah. Why don't you just, right at the beginning of this little box here, do something shocking, which we look at and say, okay, I'm zipping right over here. But since it pleases the Lord to lead people according to order, and this is maybe putting it a little gently because the Lord is order, to lead people according to order, it is therefore easier to lead one who is in order than one who is not in order. And this is my favorite line. Easier to lead one who's in order than who's not in order. So how do you help if you say, I want to be eligible for this God leading my mind and life sweepstakes? What do you do? Get in order. If you can get in order, then you accelerate this transition. And what order is something that Swedenborg basically is covering in all of his works. It's reject evil, do what's good. But what does that concept mean to you? What does order mean to you? You probably have some insight into it. Getting in order enables the divine. And why does it accelerate things? Because the latter must first be led back to the path into order. And this takes place over a period of time so as not to break the person, because we're all kept in the life and the thinking that we choose. So if you go after a life that's really out of order, God can't just say, I'm going to force you to be different. Try doing that with somebody. Try going to somebody that you think, I don't think you're living how you should be living. Change right now. How'd it go? Go do it, and then you pause the video and then come back. Yeah, right. Not very good. That's just the way that we are. That's the way that people are. People are bent. If you try to do it too hard, too fast, it breaks. And God is in the same boat that we are there. So God is trying to, over a period of time, bring all of us out of our disorders into orders. And by the kinds of things we think about, by the kinds of things we would go towards, I really feel like even in the past few days, there's been times when I got really excited by a particular idea. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go do this idea and it's going to work really well. And it was a dead end, but it got me to take an action that led to the next good thing. And I could see almost like this principle. Oh, let's say, I don't know how God operates, but I could see it that providence is in some way saying, well, we need this thing to happen. But Curtis would actually get excited about this and would take an action. So we're going to move him along in this direction because it's easy to get him to go there because it appeals to something for him. And once he gets there, that will trigger this. And then when he sees this, he can move. Like we are kind of being like, okay, like when I want my dog to come, when I say come, I'll give you a treat to do it, led by the things that we love. So it's easier to lead somebody who's in order. But look at this. The last thing I want to say about this. The latter must first be led back into the path, into order. So you can have, if you're trying to get to, let's say, our goal, you can have two different paths. What is he doing? These two different paths, and you say the goal is whatever, good stuff, happiness. This is not the right way to represent this visually. Okay, this path here, I got a good idea. Man, is this worth waiting for? Okay, so let's say we've got these two phases, right? There's this initial, if we're here, or we're here, if this is way out of order, if we got order here and it's not going, but you do have order here, then the first phase, you have to be led back to the path. This whole first phase here of what God is doing in our lives is just trying to get us back to order. And then once we're in the order, then we can be led where the Lord wants us to go. But if we're already in order, or we're putting in a lot of work somehow to get there, instead of like we're just trying to get healthy enough to start playing basketball, we're just practicing basketball from the first thing, because basketball is just about identical to spiritual fulfillment. So to me, I'm thinking, all right, yeah, I'd love to not be toiling in this phase as much as possible. I want to start here. Not that this isn't a lot of progress and a lot of work, but I'd rather sort of jump into the fast lane here. There are many more, and this is where we kind of tie our two different threads together. There are many more confirmatory particulars, which, if brought to bear, would come into debate and then into obscurity and ambiguity. This the Lord has seen it. Thus the Lord has seen it fitting to teach me by quite a lot of experience within myself. Nope, that's totally right. This meaning these things. Can you tell I'm processing this in real time? This the Lord has seen it fitting to teach me by quite a lot of experience within myself. So Swedenborg is essentially saying that with this very topic about order and not order and how the Lord leads, there's a lot of things that could be said about why this works, but actually those things provide a means for us to doubt and argue about it. And Swedenborg has been shown this by experience. And so he knows, just leave it alone, know the principle, go forward. And in this sense, it's not published. These just his notes to himself. He doesn't have to say, well, here's why this is. He just can say, all right, let's get moving. This is what produces results. I've seen it. I know it. Let's go. So hopefully, in expounding this stuff to you guys, with you guys, we get a little of that insider information to how do we upgrade the order in our lives fast. That's the news from heaven. I hope that is something for you. Let me know. Write a comment. Does that help you as you try to move forward in your life? Does that sense of order and how we can work with the divine give you any kind of lift? What effect does it have on your life? Let me know there. Like and subscribe. That would be nice. And if you want to support our programming, go to otlemonthly.causevox.com, become a regular supporter, and you'll make programs like this come out, and it will mean a lot to not just us, but everybody else who gets some kind of help from this. I hope you're one of the people who's getting help from it. I hope this concept brings you something good this week. Let us know. Good luck.